Howdy chaps, and welcome back to another update video. I meant to do some bigger videos, but I've been super busy with work and family commitments and all sorts of stuff, so I think I'll just show you what I've been up to. Well, I thought I'd start with the cars, that way people don't just immediately turn off the computer or the phone or whatever it is that you watch my rubbish on. First off, we are, despite all rumours, getting into this car. We have a new sill panel. They're horrendously expensive, so it's taken a bit of time to save up and get one. I've got to get an inner sill panel, and I'm going to get that front section that joins the sill panel to the torque box, just in case, because I suspect it's probably going to have a hole in it. So once I have all three bits of the sill panel section, I will then put the sill panel on this car, and then after the sill panel I will then repair this area, and after that area I will then put a quarter panel on this car, because you do one, then the other, then the other, then the other, because actually the quarter panel's got to go on before the roof, because it actually tucks underneath the roof. So the reason I did that one first is because I wanted to get some structure back into it, because there was virtually nothing holding it. So that's in. It's not going to do any harm there. Put a sill panel on, do that, put a quarter panel on, do that, do this back corner here, which is pretty roached anyway, and then we can go do the same on the other side, which I don't suspect it's as bad, and then we'll then go doing the roof. There's quite a lot of repairs to do prior to the roof, but yeah, it's not progressing it much at the moment because I've been a bit busy, and I'll show you why in a minute. But yes, coupes. We're back into the coupes. There's lots and lots of coupes. And a new one. This one turned up the other day. If you go back miles in my videos, I saw I was doing an XY. This is that guy's car. It's another car from him. And pretty stock standard rust everywhere, and a sunroof hole. That'll be fun to deal with. And I'm pretty sure this car has had a quarter panel. And I'm 100% correct. Usually the telltale sign that these things have had quarter panels is the wheel arches chew out, and everywhere the thing has been joined all rusts out, just like that. Half the reason that you find cars rust out real bad after they've had a quarter panel, obviously done in the 80s, is they've probably never actually cleaned all the metal filings that fall down into the quarter panel and into the wheel arches and stuff. But other than that, I think it's a factory, I want to say Walnut Glow XA Fairmont Coupe. So we're going to do that, and we're into this. And I forgot how much I loved my spot welder. Getting all that in. And Jamie from Custom Garage, he does these, and you can get these panels through Howard Assel. He does the Rare Spares panel, reworked, with sharp edges and a sharp line. And I think I was the one who convinced him to do the gutters, but he was doing these initially. And I know I cannot emphasize how well they fit and how good these reworked panels are. I know they're a little bit more than the standard Rare Spares panel, but I tell you what, I can't rate them high enough. After he has his play with them, they're perfect. And also helps having a spot welder to put it all back together properly with. Yeah, I picked up some on my travels, because actually the last thing you would have seen was my tank video just gone, where we rescued a Stuart, and in my travels I picked up some XB Fairmont front seats in black, although that doesn't really matter because you're going to have to retrim them. So I'm going to cut to the other end, because I'm not going to walk and film the whole way. One of the things I picked up on my travels was an enormous engine crane. I think they use these in the Army and the Air Force. They're called, the company's called Abbey, A-B-B-E-Y. And yeah, it's a monster of a crane. And I'll give you a hint as to what happened next. Would you look at that? The engine frame is empty. Where's the engine, you ask? There! Yeah. I'm going to put a little clip in right now of us installing the engine, and then I'll catch you back in a second. Alrighty, and as most people thought, no, I am not humping the engine crane. To actually pump it up, you have to stand on this raised step here and pump it with your right foot. Even though it looks like I'm having a really great time, I swear I am not humping the crane, even though I was enjoying myself quite a bit. What did we learn? One, it went in fairly easy, and two, I was always wondering, in the entire time I had this tank, why that rivet there on both sides is a countersunk rivet. Well, considering it happens to be exactly where the exhaust pipe is, it all makes sense now on both sides. So obviously, since you would have seen this tank last, I finished putting that in, I got that one in, painted it all, fitted the oil tank, put that in, did a bunch of work, and now the engine is in the hole. And I have been actually slowly wiring it up in my spare time, because it was wired up to run, but obviously, you know, the little control panel was like just here in the scheme of things, so the wires are really, really short, but now they need to be really, really long. So I managed to have quite a bit of the original conduit, and it's just me feeding new wires in. So I've put a little connector in here, that's the magneto wires, that's going to be the booster coil wire travelling down that conduit there. Big honking battery cable comes through here, goes inside. There is a modern starter solenoid new cable into here, joins up actually in the factory spot, and that's where another battery cable will run down. And unfortunately I didn't have much of the original tubing that comes out, so I'm sort of having to make do. But it should be okay, and I'll neaten all that up down there when I've got it all buttoned up. So realistically, there's only big battery cable, which is nearly sorted. I'll show you that in a second. The starter wire that needs to run all the way to the front, booster coil all the way to the front, and the magneto wires all the way to the front. And I wanted to run the magneto wires in different colours, so I knew which one was which, because obviously there's a left and a right. So the left mag is the blue wire, the right mag is the brown wire, and that feeds down to the conduit and goes into a big bundle of wires I haven't actually sorted out inside the tank yet. And this one needs to go through here, go through there, and it's going to go and join up with the wire that comes out through here, in there, and they go all through that bunch down. So you'll have 1, 2, 3, 5 wires coming out of this engine. It's actually quite realistically, it's pretty simple. Obviously, eventually, tail light wiring and a few things, well, they're not going to bother about that right now. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it later. Over here. Oh, inside the actual factory battery box, but it would have taken a much larger battery because it was 80 years ago. And as we all well know, battery technology has come a long way, yet it's still got a long way to go. Oh, I wonder if I can actually show you over the top of this. Oh, look at that. Down there is the clutch fork. You can see my bundles of wire down there. And that oil cooler isn't hooked up because I haven't got the lines and the right fittings and stuff, so it's actually, I will eventually hook it up, but in the short term, seeing as I've only got 20 feet forward and backwards that I can run this tank around in, I don't think that's going to matter too much. But welded myself on a bolt to run an earth line, so that was fairly easy. Clean off a bit, put a bolt on it, welded it up, and now we have an earth. I got a new battery tray. I deliberately got a big one because I suspect this may need a bigger battery in the future, although this is just my whatever's going battery. Although it is strong enough to start it. I have had this start the engine, so don't let it fool you, it's not a shit battery. And of course that runs into my little box in there, and I'll show you what's in there right now. And here we have a rare glimpse inside the tank, and I've just started doing some wiring. This is going to be awful footage, but you get that on big jobs. But here's the isolator. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Yes, I'm retarded. I put a little warning LED in there because you know, you could be like, oh la la, barrel last, driving around, yada yada yada, park the tank and forget to turn the light off. And then you could come along and see this through one of the hatches. At night time it would be particularly noticeable. A big red light coming in from inside, so you know, to when the tank is safe, there's no power going to it. You got the little switch with the little light. Yeah, not really good, but good. And remember, I haven't finished, so everything's a bit of a work in progress. But I thought you might like that little first bit of electrical goodness functioning in the tank. So that's something. Obviously I haven't finished painting in here either, because painting in an enclosed space, you get a bit high after a while. But yeah, I thought you'd like to see that little thing. That's all from JCar, all that stuff. Forgot how much good stuff they sell. Alright, as you saw, I've got it wired up. This is, don't worry about this little wire, it's just that's just that little tiny LED. And it just basically tells me when the thing is live and when it's not. So that's pretty much that sorted. And I'll hop down here. And yeah, I've been to JCar, as you can tell, and I've spent a lot of money. But they have some really good stuff. I totally forgot how much good stuff they have. So the switches and stuff that were on the stand are now into the dashboard in their correct fittings, but I don't have the original style aircraft switches, which would have mounted with screws on either side of that. So anyway, this will still work. So that's starter, booster, fuel pump on and off as that slightly drops. I'm going to run this fuse box, which I thought was quite neat. And that way I can run one big wire into sort of the back of the dash and have all the bunch of little ones. So I can cut down on how many wires run through the tank, because, you know, I don't want it to look like a rat's nest. And I tell you what, I will tell you this, battery cable, as in like for batteries, like that stuff that I've got in there, holy Moses, on a cracker, that stuff is expensive. Whew. This stuff's pretty cheap, and the 15 amp wire is even cheaper at like $1 a meter. But that battery cable, that's like $25 a meter, and I needed a fair bit of it. So that was a pricey little thing. I actually quite like that. So this is actually the dashboard you stare at the front. So the engine hours, I was testing it and accidentally left it connected, and it went for 6 hours. So the engine's got 6 hours on it already. The oil gauge was in there, but is off getting a fitting made for it. So that'll work. Compass obviously tells you which way you're facing. Which we are facing. Eastish. Interesting. And I've got some conduit and some plugs and stuff, so I can make things a bit easier. So all the wires that are on the back of this are going to be put into plugs, so that I can, you know, don't have to run continuous wires. And if, say, a wire was to get cut, you don't have to rerun the entire wire. You can just join it in. So busy. Oh, I don't know if I showed this. One of the things I managed to get on my trip to the heaven of yards, which is, of course, in Victoria, where that tank came from, is I got I got an original piece for my tank. Another original period piece. And you can actually clean it up, and you can see it's quite clearly green. That's obviously where the air intake mounts, so I was pretty happy. I can put another original piece back on this tank, because there are people out there who frown upon you for putting reproduction parts on it. Well, not reproduction, but non-original parts. But I could point this tank out and tell you that there is a lot, and I mean a lot, of original steel on top of this tank. There isn't actually that much it isn't original, because actually when I got the tank, it looked gutted, but actually I did get a whole bunch of upper hull with it, so it's not, each part sold separately, batteries not included, that kind of thing. So it looked worse than it actually was. So, when I put it back together, I did have quite a bit of the upper hull. So when you look at this side, that's an original piece. The T-piece that all these visors hang on is original. That piece in the middle is, this piece is real, that one's real. The underside is real. Unfortunately, the side is actually a new piece. But then you got, that's real, and obviously all the lower hull. So you look at this side of the vehicle, the only piece that's not 80 years old is actually this side piece. And obviously the top of the tank, because I did have an original piece, but it was warped and bowed, and it had been in the dirt for such a long time, it was totally stuffed. So sometimes you got to take the good with the bad. And a lot of these turret protectors are actually real. Visors obviously not, because if you can find them, they're worth a fortune. Although, stupid things like conduit's real. That is an original headlight bracket, things like that. So that's almost a solid piece of brass. There's all sorts of, that's original, the horn's original, stupid things like that. Lots and lots of originality on it. That's an original piece. That isn't, unfortunately, and neither is that. But if you go around here, when I get to it, I will be able to replace this piece and put an original piece on it, which will then lead me to being only 2 bits of this whole side is non-original. So a lot of the tank is actually genuine, and of course the back of the tank is as well. And I will endeavour over my time, when I can, actually replace all of the old steel with, all the reproduction steel with original steel. That's better. You'd think that little shovel mount would be at least a bit happy now, but no, he's constantly frowning. And yes, the oil tank did have to go in before the motor. So it's been a lot of progress. So I'll leave it there, chaps, and I hope to see you in the next one. Maybe I'll have some better content. See you around.